Just as a reminder, everyone, please mute yourselves. Although it's great to hear about NASDAQ, we don't want to interrupt anyone again. And I will hand it over to our next vendor.
All right, perfect. 1 second. Just get everything set up here. All right, I thought I'd turn on my camera so you all can see who the guy is behind the microphone. Hello, I'll introduce myself briefly. My name is Aaron Rose. I'm with Checkpoint Software Technologies. I'm part of the office of the CTO, so I spend quite a bit of time evangelizing cybersecurity throughout the public sector. And I'm also, my day job, I'm a security architect representing the public sector, so state and local education as well as federal for all 50 states and in LATAM. So it's a pleasure to meet you all, virtually. I can at least see your display pictures and definitely appreciate you all having us on board. So very briefly, I'll talk about Checkpoint just in case you're not familiar with us. We do work quite a bit with a lot of federal agencies, so many of you might be familiar with us, or I might have worked with you personally at some point. But Checkpoint is or was one of the founders of cybersecurity. So pretty interesting story for you, just a history lesson going back to the mid-90s. That is when Gil Schwed and his partners actually created or invented stateful inspection. So way back when we were just creating Firewall 1, and we still hold the patent to that technique for stateful inspection to this day. So now Checkpoint has grown quite a bit over the past few years. We're now a global leader with over 100,000 customers in 88 countries and 6,200 partners, and that's growing every day. We're now well over 6,000 employees worldwide, and Checkpoint has really been known over the years for innovation. The company's name officially will always be Checkpoint Software Technologies. And I say that because what that means is it made it easy for us as a software company to take our security protections that people were very well aware of, on our firewalls, and take those security capabilities and port them over to new platforms. So as things have evolved over the years, whether it's cloud technologies, work from home, the use of SaaS applications, etc., it was very simple and easy for us to take our protections that worked very well at the network level, at the perimeter, and expand that out to wherever your perimeter exists today. So you can kind of see we're trusted by some of the largest institutions and organizations in the world. So I'll give you a little bit of background as well as far as our industry recognition. So for the past almost 30 years, we've been listed as a security leader in Gartner's Magic Quadrant 22 times. And quite a bit of acknowledgement and awards and such from whether it's MITRE, IDC, NSS Labs, etc. So I guess in short, we do well, or we're very good at what we do, I guess is the best way to put it. So talking about zero trust, and you're going to hear me talk about Checkpoint Infinity, and I'll just give you a very high level of what that is. Infinity is the name of our architecture, so the unified architecture that covers all devices, workloads, networks, the traditional networks or those in the cloud, your data and your people. So we align very closely with the zero trust architecture that's been put in front of us. So it's a very powerful architecture that can enable zero trust across an entire environment with this unification of security technologies. So as far as an agenda, I'm first going to talk about the use cases that we aligned very well with, and then I'll go into the individual scenarios as well. But in short, we're going to talk about remote access for both employees and contractors, and how we secure their internet access as well while they're remote, working from home, working from satellite offices, or maybe an airport lounge. We're going to talk about those satellite offices. How do we keep them, connected in a secure manner? How are they able to access, resources and such that might be at a headquarters facility or in the cloud, regardless of where the data center is? Then we'll look at securing applications and data. So this could be for individuals, individual employees, or for contractors. And we'll look at a nice demo of that because I think it was one of the easier ways to demonstrate these technologies virtually. And then we're going to talk about scalable security, how you can scale inside of that traditional data center or perhaps a hybrid data center. So let's jump into the use cases. So the use cases that we aligned very well with, I wanted to point these out. A remote user accessing corporate applications and data using a personal device. So use case number 5. A remote user also accessing corporate applications and data using a government issued device. So we have both a BYOD policy here, and then we also have a government issued device that they're using as well. And then the other two, we've got satellite offices with both highly reliable, robust connectivity, as well as some that might be bandwidth challenged, and they don't necessarily have any kind of IT support locally. So those are the primary 4 that are going to be covered by the remote access piece of this. And then the second one would be the central headquarter operations, which is covered by, we wanted to talk about or at least look at a scalable platform that we have called, Checkpoint's Maestro solution. And this is part of our product line that we call Quantum. So, stepping back, when I was the slide before here, I'll point this out, you see Harmony. And then on the next slide here, you see Quantum. So the differences in those, it's part of our product, nomenclature or the name of the family. So Harmony is essentially securing users, their access, the data, the applications, and then Quantum is our network level protection. So that would be, the descendant of that original firewall 1 back in the 90s. So let's dive right into it. First, we'll talk about secure internet access. And this aligned very well with scenario 2, an agency employee working from an agency satellite office and using government furnished equipment is accessing the internet. So we need a way to do this in a secure manner. And again, this can apply both to a government issued device or to a personal device as well. This solution called Harmony Connect is very portable. It can go essentially wherever you'd like to place it. So let's dive into more of the meat and potatoes of the secure branch. And these are 2 kind of higher level slides, and then I'll dive into more of the technical specifics. So this same tool, Harmony Connect, this also works for branch office connectivity as well. So essentially we're establishing, some type of VPN tunnels. So they're going to be redundant VPN tunnels, and that'll integrate directly into your SD-WAN appliances, into your other network level appliances and such. You don't necessarily have to have hardware directly from Checkpoint. But when we were thinking in the context of that use case, the use case with the satellite office is bandwidth challenged. We do have hardware appliances that we could support and place on site to do, not only internal segmentation, but also internet facing access control and threat prevention. And what's great about some of these appliances, we do have the ability to support, redundant internet service providers as well as cellular connectivity. So I wanted to point that out in the context of the use case with the office that was challenged on their bandwidth connectivity. So moving in, let's talk about Harmony Connect a little bit deeper. And Harmony Connect has 2 flavors that we're going to talk about. First is internet access. So internet access is going to be essentially exactly what it says. How do we prevent threats? How do we control internet access using things like application control and URL filtering? And then how do we protect data? So all of these are going to apply to users that are browsing the web, that are doing something on the internet. And what's great about Harmony, and specifically with Harmony Connect Internet Access, is this device, this application that sits on the machine. It doesn't require any kind of hardware. It follows the user. So when we have users that are traveling, frequently working from multiple locations and such, it's not an issue. It follows the device and the user itself. So all of this is a unified policy. All of this can be configured, directly inside of a web platform or a web UI. And that really brings a benefit to you when part of the Infinity portal is something we call it, which is the portal for managing and creating policies and such for Checkpoint solutions. What's great about this is it's a unified policy. So there's no need for you to have a policy for branch offices, a separate one for users, and another one for application access, et cetera, your cloud, whatever. All of this is unified into one. So the same policy that they're that applies to them when they're sitting in a branch office can also be shared while they're traveling as well. Maybe you would want to split those up. There could be more specific policies that are applied, when they're traveling. Maybe they can't access certain applications. All of that is completely configurable. But however, when they're back on in the satellite office, the agent is, or the actual agent that's installed on the machine is going to recognize that it's on premise. So there's no need for it to send or to apply its protections, because you already have maybe a physical appliance or a tunnel established with Harmony Connect via your SD-WAN integration. So it's quite a powerful solution and a lot of use cases here. So going into more of the functional areas of this, what does it do? So the secure internet access, we embed this, or we embed threat prevention, access control, and data protection into this. So what that means, threat prevention, that's things like zero-day sandboxing. So if a file comes in that we're not aware of, something we've never seen before, we don't have a signature or anything on it, so it's completely unknown. That could be potentially a 0-day. We have no idea, or it can be completely benign. So we're actually going to sandbox that file. This includes, inside of the threat prevention, we'll call it a pillar, intrusion prevention as well. Phishing capabilities, so we can actually stop phishing attacks as they, as a user attempts to, maybe access a phishing site. So whenever you open a site, we're actually going to, if there's a form field and such, we're going to look at that form field. We're going to understand, okay, this looks like Facebook, or this looks like PayPal. However, is it tied back to a known domain or IP address? Is something been misspelled? Or are they using some sort of creative capability like iframes, where they might actually load initially the PayPal domain. However, there's an iframe inside of that box that will that creates the form that looks just like PayPal. However, that data might be sent to an attacker's web server or something of that nature. So preventing that, the account takeover piece. Threat prevention also includes malware and command and control bot prevention. So we can actually prevent those communications, and all of this happens at the endpoint level. And again, I want to reiterate, this can happen both, on premise, so maybe a satellite office or a headquarters facility, or this can be happening while the employee is traveling as well. And one of the unique benefits, I think, of looking at it from this perspective, so applying these security protections at the user level or the endpoint level, is we can actually get full visibility into encrypted traffic. So there's no need to do, the standard, man in the middle type of configuration where you're breaking the encryption on secure traffic and then re-encrypting it with the destination. You don't really need to do that because we're at the endpoint level where it isn't encrypted at that time. So a unique capability of taking this approach. Now, looking at access control, this also gives you the ability to do, a cloud firewall. So you can actually apply, like, you can go here, or you can't go there. And this could be all contextual as well. You can look at the full context and understand where they are. Are they at a satellite office, so they are permitted to actually connect to some of these, maybe more sensitive applications, whereas they're not allowed to do so when they're traveling for whatever reason. So all dependent on the policy. And of course, you have standard things like URL filtering and application control as well. So you can actually get very granular with the applications. So you'll see we listed there 8,600 apps. This doesn't include all of the app widgets that also can be stacked on top of that. A perfect example of that, we see Facebook up here in the top right corner. So maybe, Facebook is okay to browse to. So you can go to Facebook, you can look at the posts, etc. But maybe you want to restrict Facebook Messenger. Maybe you could say, all right, it's okay if you use Facebook Messenger to, to message friends and loved ones, etc. But you can't upload files through Facebook Messenger and send them files or any of these other platforms. Often we'll see a lot of organizations will say, all right, we have a sanctioned or a known, a good file sharing service. So that could be something, I don't know, like SharePoint. However, if you say SharePoint's allowed and then we block everything else, what happens when a vendor or maybe marketing receives a link to Dropbox to download some logos? And they need to get these logos down for a presentation or for some sort of like sponsored event. They're going to be blocked from Dropbox. So what you actually could do is say, you can't upload things to Dropbox, so you can't use it for file sharing of our files. However, you can download from Dropbox. That is allowed. So just one way that you can enforce that. Now, you can also layer on a third approach of data protection. So you can actually enable data loss prevention. So the ability to see the real data that maybe is inside of that file, and then make a decision of files that are images or I don't know, like somebody's budget, spreadsheet. That's totally okay. However, if you try to upload something sensitive like employee identification numbers, social security numbers, credit card type data, you'll be denied. So all of these functional areas come together in one cloud delivered service called Harmony Connect. And this is specifically for the internet access. So looking a little bit closer at like what a rule could specifically look like. So this is an example of this unified policy. So here we've got an action, which is to block any kind of restricted data from being uploaded to Google Drive. So we can also do this with the user's identity. We understand, this is Jane Smith. She is not allowed to upload anything that is HIPAA, so medical record numbers in this example, or credit card numbers. These two types of data are not allowed to be uploaded to Google Drive. So you're able to block that. So that's just an example of the, that unified rule base that comes together. And again, this is enforced at the user level on the, on the endpoint. It can be pushed out to the branch office policies and even the headquarter policy as well. So quite a bit of options to have a unified policy that's much easier to maintain. I'm gonna grab a sip of water here. So the SD-WAN piece. So this is important. A lot of organizations are moving towards an SD-WAN type of architecture, or are already there, to be quite honest. So again, that policy that we were looking at, that rule previously, ties into or can be pushed down to these, to these connectors or these integrations with all of our partners. We have a multitude of partners that we support. I won't read the full list to you here, but you can safely assume that any of the major players in SD-WAN, we're going to be able to integrate with them very easily. And on this slide, I get called out quite often. People ask me, all right, secure a new branch in less than 5 minutes. It truly is that easy. So we're going to look at something very similar to that in just a few minutes, or towards the end of the presentation. But creating a new site, whether it's a data center site where you want to share an application, or a new branch office, takes truly less than 5 minutes. So it's a pretty powerful solution there. So let's look at a couple of these scenarios, or additional scenarios. This is one, this part of the presentation is more of I find it to be the most exciting. I really like this solution and this product. It's one of the most creative things that we've created, or we've developed over the years. So two scenarios here that I wanted to talk about. An agency employee is working remotely using personally owned devices and must regularly access a public cloud-based agency application. And then scenario 3, a contracted employee provides ongoing improvements to an agency system as part of a development team, provides administrator and routine maintenance to the operational system. So these are pretty cool scenarios to work with. And I think you're going to enjoy the presentation on this. But I do want to point out that we can also kind of intermix these and pull them back to those use cases. So if we're looking at scenario 1, the agency employee working remotely on a personally owned device, we can apply those policies, and we can set policies based off of what device. So we can look at the full posture. We can say from a personal device, you can access application A and B. However, on that personal device, you can't access application C because of its sensitivity. And the same thing with contractors as well. We can set up a full contextual analysis, whether that's based off of, again, the device, whether it's government issued or not, where they are they at a satellite office, or are they, working from a Starbucks? So location based. We can also do time based as well. So there's full context that we can pull in together to make a decision and apply policies as necessary. So this is might be a bit of an eye chart, but I'll try to explain as best I can here. I did want to point out the integrations that we have as well with identity providers. I know we just saw an excellent presentation on identity as well, or privileged access management, and that is an integration that we support as well. So we can support, pretty much any major identity provider these days, all through essentially a proxy that we set up. So that data is fed down and it moves across our data plane, across that infinity architecture, so we can use it anywhere we please. Now, what was unique about these two scenarios was talking about accessing an application remotely. So what I'm trying to demonstrate here, if you look at the right side when it says data center, the data center can be anywhere. It doesn't matter if it's on-premise, if it's a hybrid data center, if it's in the cloud only, really anywhere that it exists, we can use our internal, or what we call our connectors, to access that application. So the user, from the user's perspective, on the left side, you'll see this portal. So this portal has the exact same rules, and you're going to see a demo of this in just a bit. But this portal has the same rules that we saw previously. So you can still set up, all of that contextual analysis of when they're allowed to actually access an application, from where, etc. So the user, when they log in, they see the applications that they have access to, and it's very simple. They just click on the application that they would like. If any of you have used something like an SSL web portal and such, it's very similar. I would say there's been some updates and improvements over the years to give a nicer, cleaner user experience. So let's go a little bit deeper and look at all of its capabilities when it comes to Harmony Connect remote access. Previously we were talking about internet access. Now that we've moved into these new scenarios, we'll talk about remote access, or remote applications that a user needs to access. So here we can look at, again, both company or government issued devices, as well as personal devices in a BYOD strategy. So you have essentially two major modes here. You have VPN as a service. So this is great for government issued devices. So you have full layer 3 access, VPN based. And then of course on a personal device, maybe you don't want to give that full access. A perfect example, if you think about what's happened to the world over the past couple of years, we've had a lot of people all of a sudden got a call or an email that said, hey, you've got to work from home, or sending you a laptop, or take your laptop home with you because we can't be in the office because of this pandemic. So that was a trying time, I would say, in the world of cybersecurity. A lot of people were like, all right, we have to do this. We have to support work from home. We've got to set up all of this remote access. And the answer to that for everyone was VPN. And sometimes people are even using personal devices to VPN back into a corporate environment or a government environment. And while we might be able to ensure the security of a government issued device and such, how do we know that a personal device is secure? And even if it is, maybe they have the best, great endpoint security solution, you have other people maybe inside of that household. What if a kid needs to print off a report for their school, or maybe little Johnny is working on dad's iPad playing Pokemon Go. There's so many different points of exposure here. So allowing a full layer 3 VPN connectivity back to the network might not be the best deployment that we could do. We could look at something that is fully clientless, no agent required. So this solution, again, Harmony Connect Remote Access, it supports quite a bit of applications. So any type of web application is fully supported. Remote desktop, of course, you can do that both with the native client that exists on your operating system, or it could or you can support it inside of the web browser, so an embedded client as well. And then SSH. So if you're you need maybe a contractor needs to access a web server or a developer, and they need shell access, you can enable that directly through this portal. So you can create those applications, we'll just call them all applications, or those connections from the portal. So you define the rules and make them available to the actual users. And I think all of this will kind of come together when you see the demo and understand what I'm talking about. So again, just a larger view for you, or a little bit more detailed view of the corporate applications, or I'm sorry, the portal for these applications. So the portal is very simple. The user logs in, they browse the portal, they log in, and they get a their own personal view of what applications they can access based off of how the rules are defined and the permissions that are set up for each application or connection. So you can see here we have a variety. We have a set of developer tools. We have an admin console that's going over a shell connection. We have a web application like Grafana, maybe some HR applications as well. We've got database connectivity, quite a bit here for this person that's logged in. And again, this is all fully integrated with your identity provider, so we can easily integrate with them and allow for things like single sign-on. Now, I would say one of my favorite capabilities of this tool is that everything that is done through this portal, so all of these applications as they're being accessed, so maybe that contractor is accessing the admin console of the system, whether it be RDP or SSH, we have full visibility into the user's activity. So we're able to retain those and make those, we make those recordings, we make them available inside of the log files. So you can go back and type in, maybe search by their identity. I want to understand what Joe was doing on this admin session a week ago. And you can go back and replay the RDP video. So we do a full screen capture there. And same thing with SSH, you get the full console interaction as text. So you can go back and audit and understand exactly what they were doing. And then I did want to point out, I should have put this a little bit earlier on the when we were talking about internet access, but when the employees are accessing the internet, whether it be for personal use, et cetera, we're able to generate full logs there as well. So just like I'm sure you're well aware of or use all the time with your traditional firewall and access control logs on premise, you have that same capability. So you can view exactly what they were doing on the web at any point in time. So let's look at the access modes of Harmony Connect. We talked about the application level, so the ability to go into the portal, click the application and go directly in. But we also have a network level capability too. That's what we were looking at earlier. So we have that ability with an actual client installed to do both internet-based security, so when they're web browsing, et cetera, but then we also have that application level and that remote access capability as well. So just wanted to point out, try to pull those two modes together. Even though it's still one product, Harmony Connect, there's essentially the two flavors of it would be the Harmony Connect internet access, and then what we just looked at, which is the application access. So just to dive into those a little bit further and help you differentiate the two things that we've seen so far. The network level, again, that's more of the internet access capabilities. We're going to use this for users with managed devices, branch offices, et cetera. And then, of course, at the application level, maybe you're going to use that for developers or contractors, would be a typical use case there. So if we go back to those scenarios and think about, we have somebody that travels quite a bit and is accessing different applications from different locations, maybe on a personal device. That's where we're going to look at the application level of remote access. Whereas if you have somebody sitting in a branch office, it might make more sense to have it at the network level, whether that's an actual client installed on the machine or an integration with your SD-WAN vendor or your gateway or router that you have there on premise. So two unique capabilities from essentially one product. There we go. So we'll take a quick look. This is what the Harmony Connect agent. So if that when we look at the two modes there, the network level, so maybe installed as an agent on the device, this is what it looks like. So you have that full layer 3 VPN capability, and then users, or it could be individual users on the endpoint, like we're seeing here, or an actual branch office through your SD-WAN provider, et cetera. So all of this is built into one endpoint agent for you. And I think something that's really important to call out, if you look at the last bullet point here, it's not only is it scalable, but it also validates the posture of the device. So again, going back to context, we talked about user context, their location, who they are, what time, et cetera. But also we can look at the device itself. So we can validate the posture of the device before it gets access to maybe more critical systems, et cetera, or to anything. So we're able to validate that its security posture is in line with policy before we allow that connectivity. So clientless RDP, this is something I wanted to call out as well. Remote desktop, pretty much I would say RDP, SSH, and database and web access are the primary things or connections that are being made that our customers are asking us about. So for RDP, for example, you can do RDP both in the browser natively. I think I pointed that out earlier, or you can use the native RDP client on your operating system. What's cool about that is you notice it doesn't require VPN access. Again, so we're essentially relaying or proxying this connection through the Checkpoint cloud. It's very simple for the developer or for whoever is accessing the system over RDP just to click and connect. There's no VPN connectivity required for the application level remote access. 5-minute setup. I know I said this earlier about another product, but I'll reiterate this. It does truly take about 5 minutes to set this up, and you're going to see that here in the demo in just a second. In kind of at a high level, what you're going to see at the data center level, so wherever your applications exist. So this could be in the cloud, this could be in a private cloud, this could be inside of an on-premise data center. It really doesn't matter. It's like wherever the application exists is where we'll deploy these connectors. So the only requirements out of this is that you have some sort of virtual machine or something of that nature that has Docker installed. So once Docker's installed, that's kind of where the demo is going to start. You'll run a single command to run the connector. Once the connector is online, then you'll go in and you can connect your identity provider or use a standard email approach and manually manage those users if you'd like. And then you just define the policy. You say, okay, at this data center or at this this connector has access to this application. We'll input the details, and then we'll give permissions to the users to access it. So I'm going to show a brief demonstration of how we do this with remote desktop, and I think it'll kind of pull it all together instead of just looking at static slides here. So let me start up 1 second. All right. So this is the portal. So we go into the portal and we're presented with the welcome screen to start. So we're going to do corporate applications. We're going to define an application, set up a user, and again, run that Docker command to get started. So the first step is connecting to our data center environment. So again, this is the small connector that runs inside of Docker. So in this example, we've got a data center sitting in Microsoft's Azure. And we're going to define, where that location is so that we can get the best connectivity possible. We'll grab this Docker command. Again, this is a one-line command that we're going to grab. And it is important to keep this secure because it does have the API key embedded. We'll switch over to the Docker machine and paste that command in. You'll see that it's pulling down all of the images or the container that it needs, and then it's running. That's why I say it literally takes less than 5 minutes. It's very simple to get this started. We'll do a quick check, and we do see that the connector is running, and all is well. We'll switch back to the portal here in just a second, and now we can see that we have the Azure Data Center. We're going to give it a couple of seconds. It'll come online. Perfect. So we have our connector online now. that we've deployed to the Azure data center. And now we're ready to actually get started with our applications. So we'll step into the corporate applications again, and we will connect our users. We'll say, all right, here's how we're going to do it. We can either select an integration with an identity provider, and it can be specific, or just a generic SAML connection. But for this example, just to keep it simple, I'm going to create a manual user. So this is somebody that that we're managing ourselves. So we create the user, add them, and they'll actually receive an invite from the portal that says, you've been added to this environment. Here's your automatic password. Let's get it all set up and confirm the account. So we'll log in here. And we're prompted, of course, to create a new password. Again, all of this can essentially be bypassed by using the identity provider integration. But we'll log in and look at the user portal. So when we log in, you see there's nothing here. There's no applications because we haven't actually said yet, hey, we haven't defined our policy yet and added those applications. So we're going to go in and create our corporate applications that we want to assign to this user. And for this example, we're going to use an RDP connection again. And again, you get, if you remember earlier, you have two options. You can do browser-based RDP, or you can do the native client. Either one is fully configured. We'll give it a name. We'll tell it what data center that it exists at. And then, of course, give it the IP address that it should be pointing to. You'll notice here, too, there's two login mechanisms. You can do both transparent login or you can do a managed login. So transparent is essentially, where the user will be prompted, they'll enter their credentials, and then managed actually means that you can specify what local account that they're going to be connecting to on this machine. Now that we've created the application, we just want to add our group. And just to keep it simple, we used an administrator group here, but we just want to give the administrators the access to this application. We'll jump back over. You can see that our application is there. It's been assigned to a group. And we have quite a bit of options here. We can set up tags, etc. But what we want to make sure we do here is add the user that we just created, the Matthew Manning. We want to add him to the administrative group so that he's able to see this application and access it within the portal. So now that we've done that, just do a quick refresh, and you'll see that the Windows 10 RDP is ready to go. And again, this is the web-based RDP. We click on it, and within just a few seconds, we've got an RDP window open and ready to go. So this same approach can be used for any application. So going back earlier, we saw there were capabilities for remote desktop. We saw that there's capabilities for SSH, for database connections or web applications. So really the sky's the limit as far as applications and how you want to maintain or manage that access. And that, there are use cases and scenarios that we talked about, but this tool, so Harmony Connect remote access, it's applicable to, employees, it's applicable to contractors, temporary access, maybe developers. So it's really the only limit is your creativity and what applications you have and what types of people you have accessing, these applications. Now, next, we're going to completely change gears just a bit. I wanted to talk about this use case. And what I did here is I kind of took the use case that was presented in one of the documents, talking about a federal agency and the headquarters location. And I wanted to kind of tell a story with it. So this is actually based on a real customer, of course, that I can't name. But just for example, they have a little bit over 60,000 employees. They have 10 regional offices, 1,200 satellite offices. And what's unique about them is they also have web services that US citizens are accessing. So they could be going in to fill in forms for a variety of things. And I wanted to show this just because, we talked about scaling security. That was kind of the theme of this presentation in the very beginning. And all of the products, the solutions and such that you just saw, those are all cloud delivered. But what about on-premise? We still have on-premise data centers and networks, and how do we scale our security? And I wanted to tell this in the context of what we've seen over the past 2 to 3 years. So this use case is going to be addressed by a solution that we call Maestro. So Maestro, think of Maestro as a scalable security solution, something we call hyperscale technology. So here in this picture, I'll kind of describe what we're looking at. We see on top, we have a set of appliances, and then we have a completely different set on the bottom 3. So the top 2 appliances are called our hyperscale orchestrators. So the orchestrators are essentially what are at the top of the stack. So as traffic is coming in, they're going to hit the orchestrators first, which will then funnel down to the security gateways, which are on the bottom. The security gateways are, they're connected via downlinks, and they're essentially your horsepower. So what's unique about this? So your horsepower, your throughput, they're the ones doing the real work. What's unique about this solution? If you think about a standard, cluster, so maybe a highly available cluster of security gateways, if each of those gateways is capable of 1 gigabit of throughput, but you make them a highly available cluster, so you put them in active standby, each of those 1 + 1 = 2, but that doesn't work in active standby. You still only have 1 gigabit of throughput that you can, that the box can handle. However, when you're using the hyperscale orchestrators, what's unique here is that we can actually scale those all the way up to 3 terabits per second. And the reason being is that all times, those gateways are in a full active mode, meaning that they're sharing or combining their throughput. And that's what the orchestrators are sitting there for. So they're able to take that throughput, or as I said earlier, the horsepower of those security gateways, and present them, as one, what we call a security group, which is essentially just a group or of the security gateways. And all of those gateways become one. So if you just had the 2, like in the previous, like when we're talking about the cluster, 1 + 1 now becomes 2 because you have a full active configuration. Now, when we're talking about scalability, this is pretty unique. So typically, or we'll say 5-10 years ago, if the agency that we were talking about, if they had encountered something like, the pandemic and people working from home and needing to provide remote access capabilities, and all of a sudden their throughput requirements went from, 2 gigabits per second to 20 or more, or a terabit. And rightfully so with 60,000 employees. But if you need to scale like that, 5-10 years ago, you take what you currently have and essentially trade it back in, and you rip and replace with something else. You have to buy something that's bigger. You don't have to do this with Maestro. That's really where the true power of it comes in. So if, just to make it the math simple, you've got currently 2 appliances connected to a Maestro stack, and you've got 2 gigabits of threat prevention capability or throughput, and all of a sudden you need 4. You don't rip and replace. You just go buy 2 more. You go buy the appliances to add throughput. So if you go from 2 and you need 4, then maybe you're going to double your appliances. So you'll go grab 2 more. They're each a gigabit each, and all of a sudden you have 4 of those. So you have 4 gigabits of throughput capability. So there's no need to rip and replace each time that your throughput requirements change. It's also very powerful for segmentation as well. So let's take a look at, again, back in the context of that use case with the headquarters, and we'll look at pre-COVID, and then during and after as well. So right before COVID, maybe you install Maestro. You've got your orchestrator, and you've got 2 active gateways. So you're ready for the future. If something changes, you can always scale up, just like I discussed a moment ago. And then maybe it's April 2020, and we're all getting some of the worst news that we've had in a while, and you need to scale very quickly because people are now working from home, and you also have a lot more people accessing your web services, filling out forms for a variety of reasons. It could be employment related, et cetera, or I should say unemployment related. Whatever it is, you need to scale quickly. So again, you don't rip and replace, we just add gateways. Now, what's really cool here, and you'll notice at the bottom of the slide, it says within minutes. So once you have the physical appliances, there really isn't much configuration that has to be done because you already have your Maestro stack configured in that security group, as I called it. You're essentially just going to plug in these appliances to the downlinks. So you'll have access or a connection from the orchestrator down to the gateway. And then once it's plugged in, you just need to go into the web UI and tell it like, hey, here's this new gateway. I want to pull it into this security group. Maestro says, okay, let me tell it everything it needs to know about its configuration. That takes about 5 or 6 minutes, and then the gateway will reboot. Once the gateway comes back online, so again, maybe a total of 7 to 12 minutes, it's fully replicated its configuration, and its throughput has now been added to that pool of the security group. So you've instantly gone from 2 to 4, or I shouldn't say instantly, but very quickly, without rip and replace, etc. And all of this, what's great about this is you're able to consolidate your gateways. So just think of them again as horsepower or security throughput. They're all managed, all of these logical or physical gateways, they're actually just managed as one management object. So they're represented as a single gateway. So it's very easy to, push policy or install policy. There's no need to push it to different objects, etc. It's all one object in that stack. Now, maybe things change quite a bit, and maybe your throughput requirements get a little bit more complicated. Maybe web services is getting hit very hard. However, maybe some people are coming back into the office to work, so remote access can scale down a little bit. We can then do something a little different and split those. We can create new security groups. So we can take those logical gateways and split them out and say, okay, this security group or this stack needs 2 or 4 gigs of throughput to support web services. However, our remote access security group only needs 1 to 2 gigs. So we can split those out and segment them and move them around. This is where the security gateways essentially just become horsepower again. I know I use that word a lot, but I think it's an analogy that's important to understand of what the gateways are doing in this situation. Now, the scaling capability. So again, we went from maybe web services needing 4 gigabits per second, remote access needing 1 to 2 gigs. We can actually do this dynamically now. So we can have security groups, we can have multiple security groups, and we can have multiple resources or gateways sitting in the stack. And the Maestro orchestrator up here with the hyperscale technology can actually automatically scale up, down, back those security groups. So as the demands change, so maybe it's some sort of open enrollment for your employees, and they're all hitting a specific page inside of your web services. So maybe then it needs to scale up to 6 gigs. It can actually pull from the remote access and dynamically scale that other security group. So it's a very powerful solution that requires less and less on procurement services of going out and getting new gateways, and less time for the administrators to actually manage these appliances, because everything is being handled by the orchestrator to dynamically scale and allocate those resources as needed. Oh, sorry, I forgot we have some additional animation in here I completely forgot about, but there, if you need a nice visual of how it gets moved over, there you go. So with that, I did want to give you an eye chart to go away with. So I'll be wrapping up here shortly. But I did want to point out, we talked about today, the remote access piece quite a bit. So that falls under what we call the Harmony product line. So we looked at Harmony Connect for internet access, and then Harmony Connect also for corporate access to applications. Those were the areas that we focused on in the very beginning. And then we kind of shifted gears and went over to the network level. So specifically this hyperscale capability powered by Check Point's Maestro solution, and the ability to dynamically change and allocate appliances to different security groups, or to scale up and scale down. And again, all of that without a rip and replace. But I did just want to point out in this larger slide here that we have capabilities outside of that. Again, Checkpoint software technologies. We're a software company. So all of our security protections that you saw, whether it's through remote access or at the network level, they also exist for email. So email and Office applications. So think of things like Office 365 or Google G Suite. They exist for the endpoint devices as well. And that's both, actual laptops, desktops, et cetera, but also mobile devices too. So whether they be iOS or Android, both are supported, and we're able to port those security protections over to those as well. And then of course, the full cloud environment. And when I say cloud, there's we could be talking about the public cloud. We could be talking about Gov Cloud or Azure Stacks. We could be talking about a private cloud scenario or some sort of hybrid deployment. And we do quite a bit in that arena as well. So I just wanted to give you a full picture of everything that Checkpoint does and where we've enabled our security protections. And thank you all. If you all would like a more in-depth demo, feel free to either reach out to me directly, to anyone at Checkpoint that you might be connected with, or you can just go to checkpoint.com. We have a full demo section where you can request an on-demand demo at any point in time, and we'd be happy to walk you through our products. So I will turn it back over to the team, and if there's any questions, please just let me know. All right, I don't see any specific questions in chat, so I'm going to go ahead and pass it back to the team.